My name is Kelsey Mnet. Um, if you are not talking, could you put on mute, please? It's a little bit of feedback. All right, now we're good. I'm Kelsey Mnet. I'm a senior consultant at Avanade, and I work mostly in the data science area. So today we're kicking off the Introduction to Machine Learning class. Some of you may have been on my previous course. So what happened is I wanted to be able to record and open this up publicly. So I'm going to be going back, mixing a lot of the content, so there's not much review at all. And when there is review, it will be mixed with all new material. So I can get started. A little bit about me for those that don't know me. I got my master's in public health at Washington University in St. Louis, so did not start off in data science. And I then actually worked at WashU, we call it, for about a year and a half. Moved on to Bayer Crop Science. I was a contractor there. The sponsor of this class is Bradford and Galt. Actually, they were the first ones to get me my data science job. So super excited to have them sponsor this course. I've kept up a great relationship with them for years and they're awesome. So then I actually moved to Whole Foods Market for a bit and went on to Avanade. So I work as a consultant with different clients in different areas. My current areas of focus are heavily machine learning, cloud analytics, particularly Azure, coding in Python and PySpark, and big data analysis. So I will be teaching this course for the most part today. We have an awesome guest speaker who really wanted to kick us off, and I will introduce him in more detail in a minute. But we'll be covering Python environments today, which should be really fun. So the class description of what we'll be covering. These sessions are designed for beginners, so people who do not have machine learning experience. So it would be great if you have analytics experience and some statistics experience. If not, there's a lot of resources on my website that can help with that. I've taught courses in the past on basic statistics, so feel free to dive into that. I can show my website in just a moment. So we will try to focus on demos and real life examples as much as possible and do more live coding than PowerPoint slides. I'll always have PowerPoint slides as a reference, but for the most part, I like to be doing things. Please feel free to ask any questions at any time. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat going forward. And while we're going through class and answer any of those questions that you have. Also, feel free to come off mute and say your questions out loud. We're happy to have that. So we'll be going into areas, algorithm deep dives, modeling exercises in Python, and would love to do some project spotlights as well. If any of you ever feel like you want to present something in front of the group, whether it's 10 minutes or a whole class, please feel free to contact me and I'd be happy to have you on as a guest speaker, just like Bill is doing today. So where are the code, data, and slides? Today, it's a 5-slide PowerPoint. There's really not much there. But going forward, any code that I do in class, I will be sharing at this link here, this bit.ly link. I'll leave it there for a second. So usually I'll provide like a reference PowerPoint slide, some code, and some slides. And I usually provide data as well, and I have sources where that data came from. So a rough course outline to give you an idea what you would be signing up for if you come today and going forward. Today, we're going to have Bill Harding, who works at Avanade with me, talk about Conda environments. The reason I wanted to, and we wanted to kick this off with at Conda environments is that it's a great precursor to machine learning in that it keeps your environment where you're actually doing the coding totally stable, even as you work together with your teammates or change and update packages. It allows you to keep that coding environment stable so your results stay consistent over time. Bill will talk in a lot more detail about that. But after in the next class, we'll cover data pre-processing for machine learning. So dummy coding, standardization, things like that. We'll then dive into our first machine learning model, the k-nearest neighbors, which tends to be one of the most simple and intuitive machine learning models to understand. So when we're going over k-nearest neighbors, we'll also talk about model validation and how you decide whether it's a good model or not. Then we'll move on to model evaluation metrics. So what metrics do you have? Is accuracy what you want to use? What other options do you have to judge model accuracy? And then these parts will be pretty sequential. So if you miss one of these, you might need to watch the video and catch up. So I will provide those videos on my YouTube channel. There is a OneNote and our OneDrive. I will add a lot of useful links on there. One of them will be my YouTube channel. After that, we're really going to start going into the different algorithms in machine learning to do predictive analytics. So decision trees, random forest, so on and so forth. So that will get to be really fun and show you the different areas of data science. Really excited to teach you guys. Teaching is something that I really enjoy. So I'm excited to kick this off, and I'm going to hand it over to Bill, who's going to explain Conda environments and show you guys some demos on how to use them.
Cool. Thank you, Kelsey. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I uh, I work with Kelsey in the COE. We do data and advanced analytics. I'm based out of Seattle, but we tend to be in different places. Wherever data goes, we go. And I also manage some teams that do data analytics projects for our end clients, as well as internal IP, internal patents, and things like that. So I've been using data and analytics since about 2008, starting with the Nielsen Company, and I've been doing consulting since around 2012, 2013. I'm a huge fan of Python and programming environments. I code a lot in my free time. Um, and I always notice the reason why I wanted to bring this course in is because whenever I'm working with like the first year people at Avanade or beginning Python programmers, there's a lot of really great tutorials about how to get into data science and machine learning. In fact, even really like Ivy League stuff all over the place on how to make a regression model and how to do those kinds of things. There's very little about some of the fundamentals of setting up your system and setting up your environment so that they'll work really healthily. And I find even for me in my career, there's a lot of stuff that I wish I had known at the beginning. It might have given me a better foundation that I'm using today. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. I've got my screen over here where my camera is, and I'm actually going to be working off of this machine over here. So I think you should be able to share my screen here. Great. So, and I'm going to focus specifically on on not even writing code in Python, but just managing Conda environments for Python, and that's just the process of managing actually the where you will host your code so that you can access it. If you're like Kelsey and me, we're in different projects all the time, and we're different projects have different libraries that they require, different versions and incompatibilities and things like that. If you use things like the Azure ML SDK, there's incompatibilities with the current version of Python and pip and things like that. So you need to downgrade to these other versions. Getting your version right is really important. And I see a lot of times that people struggle with is they'll just kind of have one Python environment that they use, and they'll just add new packages to it as they're going along until eventually you've added something which is inconsistent, and then your Python instance is broken, and now you're kind of stuck and you can't get anything to work. Or that you had something working before and suddenly it's not working anymore. Question. Are you sharing your screen? I can only see a slide right now. This is actually what you might think is a slide is my screen that you
Yeah,
would be
I can
looking at.
see it, Bill. So you're
Okay,
good to
cool.
go.
Yeah, so this is my Visual Studio Code window. I'm going to go through a couple of things here as well. I don't have any slides for this presentation. We're going to go into some command line stuff. You don't have to use the command line to manage Conda environments, but it's really good to show it using the command line. So I'm going to use that to kind of go through some concepts. I recommended before, if you haven't done them already, the things that I would recommend, one, I'm going to just ping some stuff into the chat window so that you have them. But again, a Google search will give you all of these. Let me go to here. I'm just going to ping that.
I just put that in the OneNote, all the download links. Hopefully you guys can get into that. So, yep.
Cool, great.
Put anything else in as you go.
The Anaconda is free. You can download it very easily. It's a Windows executable file. It's also available for Mac and Linux. You can put it on a server and have it run your website. You can put it onto a Raspberry Pi and have it run some very small code. It's a very agile framework for managing environments, especially built around analytics and data, as opposed to normal like dev work. It's kind of narrowly focused in the world of data and analytics, but it's also applicable to anything you're doing in Python because it's just a Python management tool. This is Windows Terminal. This is what I'm going to be using as my command line shell. I like it because it has a whole bunch of different things all kind of rolled into one, which is kind of a good, powerful shell environment. And once you download it, I'm going to skip through downloading it and installing it because I wanted to show you a couple of things about how it works and things like that. You can feel free to follow along. You can follow up on the video. If you have any questions or if you get stuck or you want to see something, feel free to raise your hand or indicate somehow that you want to look at something more closely, and we'll jump into it. So first, I want to point out that if I type here Python, this is actually where it gets to first. This says 390, and that's a version of Python. And I don't really know where that came from because I've got multiple different things that have installed versions of Python. I've got Visual Studio Senior, where I've installed its own Python environment. I've got Visual Studio Code, and the Python extension installs its own Python environment. I've got Blender, and that installs a Python environment by itself. So there are actually many different versions of Python on my computer, and I don't know where they all came from. So I don't know if this one has the packages that I need for my library, or if I install something else on it, it won't undo something else or create an inconsistency. So I'm going to quit out of this and go back to my main thing. So I'm going to do, actually, I do conda activate. And then, of course, a lot of you probably used Conda before, and you've probably already seen this base thing, which indicates that it's been started. If you're using the Anaconda prompt, you can use the Anaconda Navigator or the Anaconda prompt, and those applications will actually kind of do the same thing, but I'm just doing it at the command line just to show you. Once I've activated the Anaconda prompt and I've activated my environment, now if I type Python, it goes to 3.85 because that's actually mapping to a different Conda environment. And what Conda is doing is it's just routing my command line tools to a very specific version of instance of Python that I have installed. That making sense so far? So whereas before, without it installed, I have this 3.9 version. I have no idea where that is. But in this version, I have a new version.
Hey, just quick question. How did you get to this command prompt?
How did I get to it?
Yeah, actually, I kind of went a little quick and I missed it.
You got some options. Yeah. First, I'm using actually. If you go to here, I'm going to show you
CMD. I mean, is that where you're at? I mean, is that or are you in
similar? Let me show you real quick.
You went to Windows Terminal.
The CMD will also do these things. I'm going to show you specifically what this application is because it's kind of a new thing.
Oh, okay.
This is called Windows Terminal. And it's kind of like a combination of PowerShell, Linux terminal.
Okay. So you asked us to download that. That's what I was asking. Okay. Yeah. So you just are running Windows Terminal.
Yeah, but the regular command line will also work. So and then also, and of course, all of this can be done in any kind of shell. Even PowerShell would also do the same thing.
Okay. All right. So I did download Windows Terminal earlier, so I got that.
Cool. So now if you're in this, and of course, if you already installed Anaconda and you've set those path variables, then you should be able to run Anaconda base and then it will map out. Let me go to, actually, I'm going to quit this for a second. So now I'm in my base environment, and not only can I see that environment, but I can go conda env lists, and I'm going to see, as soon as this prints out, I'm going to see the list of all of the environments that I have on this machine. So these are all independent Python versions that I can route to different things, so they have different applications. So I've got one is my base environment, which I just keep in the original format that I got it, and I never touch it. The next one is I got one for Azure ML, because that has a lot of nuances as far as different packages it requires. I have one for edge devices, so like IoT edge runtimes, a little bit lighter, a little bit more pro Linux. And then I've got a UARM robotics GPIO pin reading kind of thing that I'm working on. These are the only environments that I have on this machine. But you can see they're all here in this particular labeling pattern. I want to show you something else, especially for Chuck. If you just installed Anaconda, one of the things if you run the command line in the very beginning, hold on. Let me go to right here. And if you do conda activate Azure ML, or what you activate one of your environments and the environment doesn't pop up, or it puts an error, or it's not able to find it, then I'm going to say environment variables. Yep. I'm going to just click a button here. These are the path variables. When you were installing it, there was an option to install into your environment variables this system. And if I go into here, you can see that this path right here in this path right here, C users William Harding Anaconda 3, is actually this path right here. So it's able to route my Windows system knows to look here for the word conda. So it will look in this folder. I think it's specifically here, and it will find conda there as opposed to some other place. And then when it runs, Anaconda will then activate. When base is activated, it will route it to the right conda environment that I have.
But conda base is the default.
Base is the default. Like if you are running it for the first time, you will probably have one environment, and it's called base.
Okay, and so when I do conda activate base, I get, just back the prompt, and then I do the Python command.
But it does have this word in it too, right? It comes with this word that indicates base.
No, it comes with PS.
Oh, you're running a PowerShell. Yeah, so if you're running, actually, here's a fun side note about this. If you're running this for the first time, it's actually going to run a PowerShell window first. And actually, you should see a PowerShell as the base. You can actually, this is the cool thing, off topic a little bit, sorry about this, but you can open the settings.json file of this thing, and you can add other items to it. So you can see here's my Windows PowerShell, and this is the GUID of that PowerShell. This is my command prompt. This is my Ubuntu terminal. This is my Azure Cloud Shell. And then there's a default here in the settings of this here. The default profile is the GUID of the, you can see it's the GUID here. I just changed that GUID to my command prompt instead of PowerShell, which is the default.
Okay, so how do you, So I got to it two different ways. One is I ran my Windows terminal, just that, and it came up with its own command prompt. And then I went into the the Visual Studio Code and went up to terminal and hit run there. So both of those seem to bring up PowerShell. So how did you, I see I don't got a window like, oh, I see. Maybe I do. So I can, I don't see where I can change that. So in either one of those. So I'm a little lost.
Do you want to share your screen? Is that something, sure. Kelsey, is that something he can do?
I can.
Yes, I believe so.
So let me share. Let's see, open trade. I know it's in here somewhere. Raise your hand. Hide participants. Hang on. I am getting theirs. I think more actions. So show device settings rules.
The box with the arrow pointing up into it.
That's why box. Yeah, well, there it is. Okay, there it is. I got it. And there, I'll share my desktop and screen one. There it goes. Okay, got it. So
show me your terminal window. Oh,
right.
Yeah, okay.
So there's one here, and then I got the Visual Studio sitting in behind here. So
Cool. So in that terminal there, just type conda activate base.
conda activate base. And let's
Do me a favor, and do you see there's the characters, there's an X, there's a plus, and there's a down arrow. Could you click on that down arrow for a second?
that one? Or
nope. It's you can see in the window tabs, there's actually
this one,
that down arrow.
That's what you're talking
about. Open
about.
a command prompt.
Okay. And then try it, conda.
Yeah.
Activate base.
There you go. Cool. So
There
I
you
forget
have
the
it.
protocol with the PowerShell, but it's something similar to that. I don't know why it wasn't working in your case. It probably actually already did activate, but it didn't return that base character in front of it. Anyway.
And so I'm going to ask you one more question before you move on from me, and then I'll give it back to you.
No, that's great.
Real quick, in the Visual Studio way, when I go in to run terminal in here, how do I get out of PowerShell here? Is that default shell?
You gotta, I forget the context to do that, but there's actually something you do in your settings profile that will create a new shell, and it'll actually be a command prompt shell instead of a Windows shell. I forget.
Okay, we can go into that later then. Go ahead. I don't want to delay the two.
A Google search will find it, but yeah, you can change it in your settings profile to open it in a new window. Gotcha. Oh, actually, you know what? On the bottom, you see over on the, if you look down and to the right on your screen, you're going to see a thing that says one PowerShell.
Right here. Yeah, this thing.
Click on that.
Yeah.
Select the default shell.
That's how you do it.
There you go.
Okay.
Now it's gonna change. Now your life is different.
Let's see. I don't know if it changed though, but let me see. Try it one more time. Select default shell command prompt.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame that on Visual Studio Code for doing
that.
But
don't worry about it.
It's the plus next to one PowerShell.
Oh,
there you go.
Okay. Okay. So conda activate base. Sorry, I'm stealing your time, but this.
No, I'm loving this. This is great.
Just wanted to make sure I got to where you were getting.
I want to be interactive like that, and also other people might be struggling with it. I also want to show there's another part. There was a question about if you don't have them in your environment variables, then they won't show up, right? So if you have them, if you don't mind, Chuck, I'm going to take the screen back.
No, I'll stop, sir. Thank you.
That was a great segue. Oh, sorry, not this one though. Stop presenting that one, and I mean actually this one over here.
That should turn on.
In this version, if I'm going to go to my environment variables, which actually I still have here, if you go to Windows, your environment variables, find this path, and you're going to go to edit, and you need to add this path right here to your Conda environment. You're going to find out what that is for you. If you can activate the base, if you can find this path here in your base, if I go Conda and list, you're going to see here that it's going to list all of this, but also the directory here where this file is supposed to be loaded. It generally, if you did the default installation, it should be something like this. If it's not something like this, go back to the installer and you can run the installer again. And it'll tell you that path that you put those files in, or that you should have put those files in. It's also, there's a in the Anaconda installer, there's an option, you can click on it and it will create that path for you. So you might be able to return to the installer and click on that to add that to your path variables. Hope that answers that question. Any case, it's worth there's a lot of debate. It used to be that it set that environment variable up as a default, but then they found out that now Conda inflicts with other Python libraries that you have in that system. So they made it optional and they set a default to not being clicked, but you give you an option to click on it to add it to your path variables. So you need to make a choice in this case about if Anaconda is going to be your main Python tool, which in my case it is, then you want to put it in your environment variables. If it's not, but it's only something you use sometimes, then you may not want to do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on. If you have any questions, like I'm still monitoring the chat here. I'm going to go back to this environment here, and I'm going to show you a trick. This is something I think a lot of people miss when they install it, but they overlook the idea that this is actually the location of the files. So if you go into this, for example, Control C, and I'm just going to go into a file explorer and just look at it, that these are the Python. This is the Python version that's installed here. And I think you can scroll down. Yeah, and this is the Python executable. This is a new version of Python just for that library, right? So this is Conda created all of this so they have an independent system of Python for that environment, which is cool because that allows you to go back and forth like you saw me doing when I switched to different environments. And so when I do, when I'm using this environment, I'm going to do actually, you can see now it's going to route everything to this base Conda environment. And if I do Conda activate Conda activate Azure ML, now it's going to do this. I'm going to do Conda env lists, and I'm going to put this in here. You're going to see that it's changed. And now it's routing, instead of to the default location, it's routing to this Python file. So you can actually, what I'll do, and I recommend everybody do this when you set up your machine, take this EMS folder and add it to your quick access toolbars and pop it right in here so that it's right there. So that always, if you want to check something or you want to look into a file, you can map to that location really easily in a Windows machine. And that means, you know, well, you can all right away, you can click, and then I'm right in here. And these are actually all the different environments. So I can look at what's going wrong with those files and things like that. And why is it routing it to a different place? These are usually your, especially for me, when I first got into Anaconda, I was so excited to get into data science that I overlooked all of this stuff and really kind of ignored how any of these things work. So this is an important part of understanding that. So now we have that, we have different environments. Go ahead.
Another good question again. So do you have a kind of, you know, a Word doc that kind of says these are the environmentals that you should start with, the default, something that you can add in OneNote or something?
I feel like that really depends on your project, but I would recommend for every different project that you do to create a new and independent Anaconda environment. Because you can have as many as you want. I mean, as far as like which ones are the best ones to have, I don't really have. It really depends on what kind of programming you want to do or what kind of, you know, you have to sail your own ship at that point. But as far as just making sure that for your project, make a new environment for each thing. So, and we're gonna get into that. So we're gonna like, let's say I have a project and I'm gonna work on it with Kelsey, and she's gonna roll on the project in a couple of weeks, and I want to create an environment just for that. I'm going to show you actually the documentation here. Again, I don't have any slides. This is one of the great times in life where the actual documentation is the best thing that you can get, and there's no better documentation somewhere. So I'm going to ping that in the link here. This is the environment for creating new. And I don't remember all of the commands, so I always just come back to this doc. The way you do it is actually in lines like this. You say Conda create new myenv Python version, Control C. I'm going to put this into my Notepad++ window. Just going to create a new thing here. And I want to call this, actually, let's call this DS class home, and I'm going to create this environment. I'm going to give it the name of DS class, and I'm going to specify the Python version that I want it to install. And then it's going to do that. Of course, you can use operators and things like that, like greater than this version or something like that. This can be important because some Python packages are only compatible with specific versions of Python. And so you might have some kind of need to install an older or a newer version, and you want to make sure that doing that does not mess up all of your other applications that you're running, right? So I'm going to create this environment here. I'm going to put it into my shell. And it's going to create this environment, and it's actually going to, it's going to first look at everything I've downloaded in the past and install it from there. But if I don't have the right version, it's going to go to the cloud and look for it there. So here, yes, I would like to proceed. It's going to, again, you're going to see it's going to prepare what it needs to, then download what it needs to, install everything. And you can see it's already, there's a logged system of which packages are listed as being compatible with each other, and then it's ready. So Conda env list, it's created a new environment, And there's my DS class. So I can now conda activate DSCLASS. Then now this is a new one. I can go, let me see, I want to go Python. 3612. That's the version that I asked it to install. That's great. 3612, because 12 is the greatest version that it could have within the parameters of 3.6. So now I can work on this environment. I can install all of my other packages that I want. So I'm going to install my package that I want to get. This is Altair. It's another package that I like. Of course, it's just completely arbitrary. I just copy and paste from the note here. Oh, wait, let me actually Control D, quit. And I'm going to install this package in here. Of course, pip and all other things are routed to that DS class. So it's not installing it in my base environment. It's installing it over there. So I can go back to my base environment and see that that library is not there. And that's useful because I want to work in this stuff. And I don't want to have to download something that's going to mess up my machine, in which case I have to go back to another client and say like, well, this was working, but then I installed another thing and now it's not happening. That's a spot you don't want to be in. So different projects, different environments, keep them separate.
And I can give an exit.
Go ahead. Sorry. My one question is again, you started creating all these different environments, but really, what do you do in an environment? And for us novices who've never had even created an environment before, so what's all encompassing of an environment?
Very simply, it's just that it's a separate. You can think of it like a separate Python instance where all of the packages that are in it. So I guess you install Python and then you install a bunch of packages from different sources that have all of the code that you're going to be running, like scikit-learn and those kinds of things, right?
Okay.
And then all of those, hopefully, the people who make them try to get them to work well with the whole ecosystem, but they made it like it could be something was made in Python 3.4 and something has happened in Python 3.6 that no longer works, and that person's no longer working at that company, so they're not maintaining that library anymore. So you have to install an older version. In this case, you can see this DS class that we opened, this created a whole independent sovereign Python environment where I can add libraries and do tests and things like that. And it's not going to mess with the environment that I have for my Azure ML environment. Azure ML is very finicky. And so when you install stuff into the Azure ML library, it's likely that other things could cause incompatibilities. So I have a different, if I'm running an Azure ML project, I use this environment because I know this environment is set up to work with that. And if I want to use something else, I use specifically that, this one here. Does that answer your question?
I guess you for different projects or for different specific tasks, you will create a new environment.
Yep.
100%.
And I can give a more practical example of why that might make sense to everybody.
Okay.
So I was on a sales forecasting project at one of my past positions, and we had certain packages installed. Well, we wanted to move to the cloud, and we reinstalled packages, and it ended up being different versions of those analytics packages. So between the like on-premise local the local environment versus the one that was on the cloud, same exact code had a difference of $1 billion in the forecasting predictions, and nobody could figure out why until we looked at the versions of the packages. So if you want consistent results across time, you need to keep that environment stable in order to not have that happen or have something not break. And sometimes, as Bill says, your computer will stop working, your Python will stop working, and then you have to go start from scratch and go through.
Mm-hmm. Definitely being able to deliver things reliably and consistently is what a consultant lives on, because that's all about reputation and things like that. You have to be able to manage this quickly. You don't have a lot of time to troubleshoot with the client before they start to lose faith. So you need to make sure it's really important to make sure that you spent some downtime building this foundation before getting into the libraries. And I see all the time that like I'm working with another person on an ML library and they had a thing that was working and then they went home and they installed another package to do a different thing and now nothing works and we're kind of in a crunch because we have to spend the day uninstalling Anaconda and reinstalling it, or like, you know, just power washing your whole machine. Much better create a new environment, test out your new thing. It'll be in a safe place. You can always go back to the work you have and you haven't lost anything. So it's actually a good segue to this question. Now I've created this environment, I built my application and I'm happy about that. I want to share my application with somebody. So I'm going to go into, this is a list of commands I have from earlier, but I'm going to create a file that I can then give to Kelsey and be like, Kelsey, this is the Conda environment that will work, right? So this is what's installed on the server in the cloud that's running this machine learning job. This is what you need to have installed locally in order for your application to work when you clone the repository. So I'm going to grab this. Oh, that went away. Let me go. Yeah. Oh. And in this, I'm still in my DS class. I'm going to create this folder here. I'm going to create conda list and I send that list to this spec file.txt. It's going to write this file. Now I'm going to go find that text file. Let me see here. Users, William Harding, and spec file.txt. This is the file that we're talking about. And it's built this file, and you can see this file has all of it has some code in here so you could create it from this file, which is useful. So if I give this, I'm going to give this to you guys in a second. Conda create with this and the name of the environment you want to call it, and then use this file to install it. And you can see in here all the stuff that's been added that's different from a base Anaconda environment. These are all the things we just put in. This is where it's going to get all this stuff. And this is what you need to create this. So taking this, and I'm going to put it into the chat window, and I can say, Kelsey, please take this and install this package. I think I can. Yes. No.
You shared it earlier.
Actually, let me try this window. This one. Yeah.
There.
So it's going to upload here. And as soon as that happens, yeah, I already did this in the morning class, so I'm just kind of repeating myself, but replace and share. That's a very specific Python environment. And so you can download that and then create your own from that file. So you do that with, I'm going to share the line. Again, I never remember this stuff. It's in the doc here. Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually in the text of that document. You can do it like this. Control C. I'm actually going to paste this into the chat window as well. And the specific one, if you don't want to fill in the blanks there, you can create DS test from this file. I've filled in the blanks here. It's like this. That is the code that would build that environment if you were to recreate it, which means I can go back and I can recreate a clone of that file. It means I can actually build it on a server. I could load it up onto a server. I could put it onto a Raspberry Pi. I could give it to Kelsey. I could put it in my code repository, and that way people who are cloning the repository also know what kind of environment to build and things like that. Very useful file to have. There's also another very similar part of it, and I don't have it here. I'm going to go back to this doc, Control F, .yaml or YML maybe? No. History. Nope. I had this. Where did I have this? Let me look in. Okay, let me close out this stuff. Google Keep is where I keep my book of spells here that I use for stuff. This is where did I have it? This one here. This is the command I'm looking for. Export an environment from history. Conda export from history. I want to put this out to a file, so let's call this ds test and export. Yeah, I'm going to create just a similar format of the same exact file. So a little bit nuanced here. I'm going to create this, which is going to create this file. And then let that bake for a couple of seconds. And then I'm going to open this in Notepad++. There you can see that this is the version of Python that it opened with those dependencies in it. It's a shorter version of the file, but it's also something you can use. Points on that is that once you have it, the Conda environment, of course, you have one for just this one particular thing. You can then transfer it to other people. You can transfer it to other devices and things like that, and you can maintain consistency, and that's important. And moreover, you can go back to your other project without having messed it up. I'm going to show you a couple more things, but before I go into that, does anyone have any questions about this section so far?
Lots, but you know, I'm experimenting with help already in Python, so
cool. I recommend, if anything, I could really preach out is like spend some time and work on this before you have a client project. Don't wait until the day in which you need to have something due to the client to try to figure out Conda environments. This is consider this one of the core skills that you have.
Right. I think that the key is what do you all need to have done for a Conda environment? So I mean, you went through this very fast. So.
Well, as far as what you need to have in the Conda environment is relative to your project, and only you know that. I guess I'm going to take another question. Actually, I see Nashamai.
Yeah. Hi. Yes, William. So I'm unable to download the spec file.txt that you share in the chat window.
Let me.
It said it was not shared to everyone permissions wise.
Oh, there might be a permissions issue. In somewhat, I guess you know what I could do. I could just paste. It's not a very complicated file. I'll just paste the file into the chat window. Let me do that. And then you can save this. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of irrelevant because this is just for an example. And there's nothing really in this file, so you're not really going to have a really complicated environment if you use it. But I'm just saying that this is what it would look like if you were to use it. You could copy that, paste it into a text file, save it, and then run that code, and it would work as another example.
Okay.
But the main part is, and actually, more than like you being able to do all of this from memory at the end of this class, there's not a test or anything like that. More that you understand that this framework exists. Conda was designed so that you can do this, so that you shouldn't, and I shouldn't have to hear about your project where you went into the client and the day that you went in, you had to like manage a Conda environment problem or something like that. You now know that you can work this out in advance.
Okay.
Especially if you're going to be using Python for data science and you're going to be using Anaconda to do that, it's worth it to spend some time to have this as a foundation so that you can just do this stuff very easily.
And I had one more quick question. So you had an environment called Azure ML. So it's like if you work on a cloud environment and if you have installed the Azure files, whatever is related to that, and then how do you map that environment to the Conda? Like how does it show up as one of the environment to you? Like, can you show that piece?
Great part. Yeah, we're going to get into that. So there's a couple of things. One, if Conda is in your path variables and you do it here in the command line, I'm already doing it here in the command line here. I have Conda and list. And now you can see with the asterisk that's going to pop up here that is saying that any Python commands or any pip commands are going to map to that particular environment and no other. So I can be assured that it's going to map to that. However, there's another step where you could actually do this. I'm going to go to Jupyter Lab. And this is actually one of my favorite things about this whole ecosystem. I'm going to do this. Of course, you've all, maybe you've done this, maybe you haven't. I recommend Jupyter Lab if you've never seen it before. Going to load it up. So great. These are the ones that I have, but that DS test environment is not there. Why? And so why is that? I want to be able to, for applications like this in Visual Studio Code, I want them to be able to find that. So one more step, and I'm going to paste this into the chat window as well. This is also very relevant stuff. Control C to get out of this. Another class altogether on Jupyter Notebooks if you haven't gone into that, but worth a Google. I'm going to do here. I want to say I got it somewhere here. I didn't delete my, let me go back to my book of spells here and IP kernel. Where's my Notepad++ window? It's right here. This is the line that will do this. So the thing is, you need to register that environment with your kernels so that things like Visual Studio Code and other things can find it. So, and this is that process. So Python, IP kernel, this is an IPython kernel, which is what Visual Studio Code and Jupyter Labs will use, install for the user. I don't actually do this. I leave that out because mine is already installed at the user level. But if you installed it with admin privileges, you need that. This is what I'm going to call this. I'm actually going to call it, what was it called? DS test? Did we say? Is that what this is called? DS class. DSCLASS. Take that thing called DS class and give it the display name, and I'm going to call it here. I'm going to give it a pretty printed name, DS space class, because I can be a little bit more legible. So it's going to give it a display name. So when it comes up in things, that's the text it will use. Control A, Control C. Then I'm going to go back into this window. I'm going to put that in here. Notice I started using the PowerShell window when you brought it up. Great, it did it. Oh, I don't have IP kernel installed. So pip install IPYKERNEL. I have it in my base environment. I don't have it in this environment. I have to install it in this environment. Just takes a second. While this is installing, I'll paste this into the chat window. Takes just a second. And then up and up. And so I'm going to register this environment. Boop. Now you can see this is important because it installed this kernel spec in this class for this environment. Now, if I go to Jupyter Lab, it's going to go right back to it. DS class, and notice, see, it says even the pretty printed text there for that environment. So now it's able to find it. Visual Studio Code as well will now be able to locate it. If I go into here and I go into this, it's not here. If I close the application and start it again, then it will be able to find that. Oh, already running. While this is booting up, I'm going to go and show you guys. How long is this going to take? Pretty close to right on time. Perfect. I'm going to show you one last trick before I let you guys go. I'm going to close this out. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to go back up and say when I created it, install the class, here's where I did it, and installed in its kernel spec in this location. And notice it gave you the path. This is another thing that I kind of wish I had known way back when, because you can save this path that it gave you, and you can go there, and you can find it's a place, and there's a kernel.json, and this is how. This is a little bit under the hood that you don't need, but it's good to know that you say this will actually is mapping to this directory. So if you mistyped that command, or for some reason the Python library is not managing something like that, go to this place and look at that path and make sure it's going to that executable, because that's the way that you know that it's loading that file and not some other file. It also has super fun is you can actually, these are the icons that come up here in that window, and you can replace them with something else. Like if you want to, do I still have my little robot? Let's see if I have any pictures here. I'm going to take a picture here, and I'm actually going to, I don't like that much, but I'm going to see if I can find a little robot icon. ML icon. And then here, and I'm actually just going to grab this. Perfect. This is the kind of stuff that really pleases clients when you do it. Copy the image. Actually, I'm going to save the image as a little, oh, that's a wrong kind of file. Oh, and it doesn't even exist in the site. Thanks, Bing. Save image as. Let me actually just do this to save it real quick. Anyway, I don't have the point of hunt down a model. It's kind of almost a time, but I can save my own icon, save it as an image file, and I can replace.
You've got a small robot PNG in your downloads folder.
Did I have it? I thought I had it this morning.
Go back to your Edge or your Chrome where you had it. It's still on the bottom left hand side.
Oh, it's still on the bottom of my tray. Thanks, buddy. Oh wait, actually, it's not there anymore because I probably deleted it. Yeah, moved it. I did it this morning, but I guess I didn't keep it. That's on me. My apologies. The point being is that you can that file that's here, that's in this folder, when you go to these kernels, and again, I'll put it right into my quick access toolbar, so I can go and look through and I can troubleshoot my environments. But I can go into the class, I can go to this icon, I can actually, let's just see if I can open it with Paint. Open with, and maybe I'll just draw on it a little bit. Control S. Now I've changed it. Now, if I go back to this, it's going to load up this library. If that's still running, is this still running? I might have shut down this kernel. Nope, still running. One second. Oh, Jupyter Lab. Hope I changed the right file. Go back into it. Huzzah. You can see that I've added my own custom icon to it. So, I mean, you can replace these in my personal machine. I've got all of these replaced with all kinds of different icons, so it looks more cosmetic and things like that. Point being, to answer that question is that you can, this is a location within your Jupyter kernels where you will store all of the different environments and all of the paths and locations for all of those things. That's my presentation. I want, I really like going through this stuff, so I wanted to get a chance to bring it out with other people. Anybody have any questions with any of this? I mean, I went over a lot, so feel free to let me know.
So I had a quick question here. So Kelsey, you gave an example, like, you know, in the local computer, you developed something using say a Python version, and then in the cloud there was a different version, a different environment, and then you were working on a sales prediction project, and then it caused a $1 billion difference. I'm surprised. I'm just trying to understand why, as to, you know, I was of the thinking, like, I am a master's student and I have worked on Python projects and done thesis. So in my opinion, from my understanding so far, I haven't worked in the industry as a data scientist at all, but I'm just trying to understand here, like, you know, how will it isn't Python libraries built over one another? Like, say we have 3.7 and then you have a 3.85 version, you know, in the cloud. Will that the 3.8 version not have everything that the 3.7 version had? And why would the sales prediction go different? I mean, I cannot understand why. How could there be such a huge difference?
So I can explain a little bit more about that. So when the person originally did the project, it was several years before. So it was a very old version of that package.
Oh, okay.
So they started iterating on it and improving that package. It was a time series package, actually. So when we went through when we actually compared the predictions side by side, the old ones were terrible. Like, they were not accurate at all. So you saw, and we actually used multiple versions versions and compared them side by side. And the later version, they had actually improved the package by a lot. And we were getting much better predictions. But then the salespeople and the business stakeholders were like, okay, why is it different? So we needed to be able to go back and explain, okay, it's better than it was before. But this was the difference, and be able to trace it back to that one thing. And it was actually a dependency of a package that caused the issue. Since it was analytics, it was improvement over time. That's why you saw a big difference.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I have actually another really good example if you want to dive into it. I'm going to ping it into the chat window. This is actually for a client project that we had where there was a request to use kind of an off the beaten path Python library. And you can see in this process here, there was an update. I'm going to load it up actually in my other computer so I can share it. They had made this. Someone made this thing, does process mapping, which was really important. However, there was an issue with when NumPy updated its library, it changed the thing about how it did, how it treats null objects and how it aggregates them, which affects averages and things like that. It was a change that they made somewhere around 2018 or something like that. And this was a really old library. Here we go, update NumPy object. I can see if I can find the actual branch that I did. I deleted it maybe, but in order to make this application work, I had to install an older version of NumPy, which had the older method for dealing with null values, and therefore allowed this process to run. So I created a new environment for this older code, and then later I went back and updated this code for that author, so they had a current version and they were very appreciative. But for the project, I was able to update. It was easier to downgrade the version of NumPy that I had and go forward with this process than it was easier to refactor the process that he had made so it would work in the future. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And then
Yeah, it made sense. But doesn't it come as a, that's my question. So when you install Python 3.9, doesn't Python 3.9 automatically carry over the previous version of NumPy that existed in Python 3.7? Doesn't it happen automatically when you install?
Yes. And there are certain libraries which may not have been updated to that newer version. So you could be ahead of some library and then your application doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
It's ultimately what it really comes down to is it's not a perfect world. It's a lot of developers, all within time constraints, most of them working in their free time on things like this that make kind of most of infrastructure run. So there's just a lot of inconsistencies, and having things that work all the time is difficult.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Especially, and I don't mean to point fingers, but within the Azure SDK for Python, there's a lot of different components in it. There's a lot of teams that go into it. They are unable to always be in the current version. So if you install Anaconda today, it is not a guarantee that it works with what the SDK is at today.
Oh, interesting.
In a perfect world, that shouldn't happen, but global technology shortage, here we are.
You got a really good question. In VS Code, how do you choose the right Conda environment, or how do you link an environment to a project folder? I don't know if you have a hard stop and have to get off. That makes complete sense.
No, I'm all done, but as we're wrapping up, but let me go back into this here, open my project, open folder. This is my repos. I'm going to go, this is the one I like. Open this. When you have, you use, of course, the Python extension for Visual Studio Code. That's obviously, that's what you get. It's this one right here. And then it'll load an extension here, and there's a tool to use that. It'll pop up in just a second. I walk through this at the command line also because it's much faster to do at the command line. But here, as you can see, this is my environment. I'm going to click on this, and you can see all of the different ones. And now that I have registered that environment, I was expecting it to pop up here, but it did not. And that's frustrating. Let me go into, actually, I'm going to try to run one of them. Oh, it didn't even finish loading yet. That's why. So select interpreter. Now DS class. There it is. It was just a cached text string that it had. So now I've picked it, and you can see this is my DS class content environment. I'm actually just gonna, for fun, I'm gonna run something. It's not gonna work because I don't have AML installed on in this environment. But I'm gonna run a cell. It's gonna launch this up. This is gonna be my interactive window that's gonna run my code, and it will just crash in a second. But you can see it's connecting to that kernel here, and it's connecting to that environment. I'll show you how I can change that in just a second. There we go. This is the environment. If I want to switch to another environment, be like, okay, it didn't work in this environment. Let me try this other version that Kelsey just sent me and see if it runs in this environment. Click on that button, and it's slow to react, but it is going to do it. Now you can see it's switching to kernel Python Edge. That's going to retransfer everything and run the same code in the new environment. Yeah, in Apple, actually, as an example, still Anaconda is available on it. It runs in a bash-like shell. I don't know Apple very well, but I know Linux command line stuff, very similar to that process. If you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. And all the commands are universal across platforms. Yeah, if you if you're using an Apple computer that accesses the web, you can still go to that website and download Anaconda. I want to say that's, yeah, Mac OS, so you can download it for that platform. You can also, if you're using a smaller terminal, even like a Raspberry Pi or something like that, which is command shell only, you can just use you can just woo-get it and get it that way. So whatever your platform is, as long as you can get to this website, you can get Anaconda.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much, Bill, for coming. We really appreciated it. Learned a lot from you. I learned even more than I did this morning in this class. So we really appreciate it. Just as a heads up, if you guys want to come to the PySpark course that I'll be offering, this one will always be on the first Thursday of the month. And then my PySpark course will be the third Thursday of the month. However, if you don't have a lot of Python skills, I recommend waiting on the learning PySpark, or you'll get really confused. I still do. But please feel free to come back. We have useful links in here, and hopefully you got a really good use out of this class. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Have a great night, guys.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kelsey.
A lot. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.